Welcome to the College Knowledge Podcast, sponsored by the College Planning Network and Paradigm Financial Group. Whether you're searching for that right fit college, applying to college, or figuring out how you're going to afford it all, you're in the right place. You'll hear from deans, admissions counselors, student athletes, and scholars from esteemed universities and colleges around the country. We'll dig deep to uncover their insight and unique experiences. So whether you're a student gearing up for college or a parent with college-bound kids, sit back, relax, and listen. Like you, we have lots of questions. Our guests have the answers, and we're excited to share them with you. Let's get started. If you didn't know, we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Elite Collegiate Planning. Make sure to share and tag us.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of College Knowledge. Today, I am your host, Joe Kerins. Dave is on vacation, so we have our backup. Actually, I will call him a backup, but Clay Kovach is joining me today. Yeah, Clay's filling in third chair, we'll call it. But we are very excited today. We have a great guest all the way from San Jose State University. He's the Assistant Athletics Director for Ticket Operations, Darren Coelho. Sorry, I put the L in front there. Darren Coelho. Darren, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, so I always, we always like to know a little bit more about our guests and understand, I guess, a little bit about, we'll say your role, but also how you got to where you're at. What was your journey like, as far as through high school, college, and leading into where you're at today? So how'd you get to this position in your life?
Well, I think I always had a little bit of a personality, and I was somebody who, I hope I still do, in fact, like to talk a little bit. And so, going through my high school years, I actually went to Leland High School in Almaden Valley, South San Jose. For historical perspective, Brent Jones, former San Francisco 49ers, a Leland High grad, as is Pat Tillman, who was a freshman when I was a senior.
All right.
But we had a high school radio station. And so I played high school basketball and sort of a social guy, whatever. But I really enjoyed part of my high school years. I actually was part of my high school radio station, which the call letters were 89.3 KLEL, Leland High KLEL. It's not there anymore. It was bought by basically sold to a rival high school in San Jose. And I think is on the air somewhere. Okay. I mean, it's been a little while since I've been in high school. But for me, that was a way that I could sort of convey my personality a little bit and have a little fun at the same time. And so that really led into an opportunity at San Jose State. I really didn't pursue the radio side of it, but my journey led to public relations major, and sort of really with communication studies too, refining my speaking skills and my writing skills and whatever. So how that parlays, in a university, in a professional perspective, a lot of PR majors ultimately are media relations people, SID, sports information directors, that sort of thing. Mine sort of led as for an opportunity with a brand new professional football team in San Jose as part of the Arena Football League, the San Jose SaberCats, and I was their first ever intern in media relations. And like a lot of things, when you're first, around your initial opportunity, I really wanted to absorb everything in the front office. So I was involved in marketing and heard how the sales guys talked on the phone, and I figured out some ticketing things, and ultimately that, without jumping ahead too far, that led to an opportunity to be hired there full-time as a ticket manager. And then I parlayed that at San Jose State and been there, for quite a few years now.
Got it. I'm curious, throughout your journey, kind of taking it from, hey, I want to showcase my personality, radio leads to different areas, to an internship. We've always heard many stories about mentors in life and kind of helping say, hey, this is the pathway, or this is the roadmap, or hey, you should pursue this, or if that's what you want to do, this is how you do it. Any experience with mentors in your life that you can look back on and say, oh yeah, that was a big role in how I got to where I am?
Yeah, I think it's interesting from a communications perspective. When I was on my high school radio station, the teacher was a guy named Joe LeBou. And when I got hired at San Jose State, quickly realized in our season ticket and donor circles, Joe was really involved. And I had no idea at the time that he was as involved as he was, but he was a proud alum. And this is a guy that on his free time went to practices, loved football and all that. So I think, from that angle, Joe LeBou certainly was was one of the first, but after graduating, two mentors for me. I think the grand poobah in college athletics ticketing is Dave Lowenstein. Anyone who knows anything about what UCLA does should, if you don't, you should look at it. Their central ticket office, and I don't know how many venues it is now, but for many years, their central ticket office ran 23 venues on that campus. And so when you called there, they would train everyone equally, and they wouldn't per se have that call go, all right, you only want sports, you're going to get a sports person. You had to be trained in every single angle so that you could talk productively to anyone who wanted arts or a museum tour or had a question about the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
So Dave Lowenstein for sure. And then locally, he's passed away now, sadly, but a gentleman named Dan DeBoer worked at Ticketron, for those of us that are of gray hair and before. In the Midwest, that was Dan's background, but he was the original director of ticket operations at what is now called SAP Center in San Jose. When the arena opened in 93, it was San Jose Arena, it was Compact Center, it was HP Pavilion, and now it's called SAP Center.
Yeah.
Dan was the box office manager there, and I really liked spending time with him and really learning the ins and outs. I mean, we don't do a lot of special events at San Jose State, but the variety of events and the fact that we partnered with the arena for NCAA basketball a few times, me from the ticket side as a ticket liaison and Dan from the operational side, was really, really a special relationship and one that I coveted for many years until Dan sadly passed away.
The other part of your story that I was interested in is as far as the internship goes. You said you were the first intern, right?
I was.
And oddly enough, it's that you started working out of college from where that internship. Now, was that your first internship? Did you intern anywhere else?
No, it's sort of an interesting story. If you don't mind, I share it.
Sure.
In the old days at San Jose State, like a lot of academic universities, in certain majors, you had to do an internship. So I remember at the time that it was this big old dusty binder, right? It's like flip through here and find alphabetically the one you want. So you might have had somebody that wasn't interested in public television at all, and they flipped a P and they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do that. Or somebody in a hospital situation that would choose to do that just to satisfy the credit. So obviously the experience is vital.
Yeah.
But for me, I actually petitioned the department because the SaberCats were a brand new entity. Yeah. The Arena Football League had been around, but it was a brand new entity in a downtown arena in 1995. Arena was just a few years old. It was summer at the time, summer activity for starving football fans, right? Yeah. That didn't have the NFL or anything else. And basically, as their first sort of administrative intern, there were some folks on the football side that came around the same time or soon after. I basically petitioned them and said, look, what other better opportunity is this? This is exactly what I want to study, exactly who I want to work for to be a part of this brand new organization. And I think that's, that ultimately is what it led to was, I petitioned, had to satisfy some requirements in terms of, my time and are they compensating me somewhat or whatever. Yeah. And that's what I would suggest to anyone who has that interest is obviously you want a wide range. I mean, if your web is wide, that's great. But, I would hope that darn near 20, 30 years, 25 to 30 years later than I did it, there's more opportunities and things like that. But I'm glad the San Jose State agreed with me and allowed me to do it because that led me on a path that after graduation, even though I worked in private industry for a short time, it led for a full-time opportunity afterward. And clearly there's a lot of places, university, et cetera, that are like that, where they want you to come in as an undergrad, gain experience. And then, and to be honest with you guys, athletic departments are expanding in size because of creative and, marketing things and, more campus involvement and things like that. So there's more opportunities than there have ever been now.
Yeah, I want to get to that in just a second, but I think that is extremely pivotal and such a great story because we've, a lot of times when we talk internships, it usually leads to, hey, I got an internship and then immediately, I found out I didn't want to do that. Like, hey, this is specific. I thought it was one thing. And now when I'm in the real world looking at it, I don't want to be doing this. And that can lead to maybe a different, type of job within a certain major program, or it may lead to changing your major completely. but it's very important to understand that. And, but I think the initiative, just think about it this way from an employer standpoint. Because I've heard this story a couple times now. If you are in college and you have a dream job and you want to work for a company, you want a specific role, that's where you want to be. And there is not an internship opportunity. And then you put the work in through the school and through the employer to make it happen. That employer, I would say it's going to be a pretty high chance they're going to hire you because that's how dedicated you are to just want to work there. An employer, you want your employees to want to be there, right? So I think that can go a very long way just because there may not be the opportunity. If you're in college right now, you're in high school and you're thinking, hey, I know I want to do this. If there's not that opportunity there, the concept of trying to network and take the initiative can obviously, it worked in your case, but it would look extremely well. I know if anybody came, if I owned a business and somebody came to me and said, I want to work for you and I want to be an intern and I created this through school, I'm like, I'm hiring this kid as long as he, shows up and works. But it's pretty impressive. And I think that's a great part of your story. I think that our listeners should definitely have that as a takeaway because I've heard it. This isn't the first time I've heard it. And it's always led to, that's where you work. It's pretty interesting.
Well, and again, to add one other thing at San Jose State that I think is special too, is we launched a program a number of years ago under Brent Brennan's guidance, who's our football coach. But Brent and some other staff there basically have a thing for our student athletes. And it started as Beyond Football, which was our football student athletes. We're in Silicon Valley and there's plenty of opportunities around us. And these student athletes really are learning opportunities with interviewing and internships or whatever while they're undergrads. Many of them continue, now with extra years from COVID or the transfer portal guys coming in, whatever, you might even have some grad years there where you can do that. And now it's extended beyond at just football. It's now beyond Sparta, which is all of our student athletes really have that opportunity now in some capacity to try to get to know some of these high tech companies that are interested and especially, engineers and other stuff that we're really well known for on our campus. But it comes down to this, and this is one of my biggest regrets, Clay and Joe, is that when I was in college, I refed intramurals and I had other part-time jobs, whatever, but I wasn't engaged in our athletic department the way that I look back now, I wish I was. So I'm glad that I pursued that opportunity and I found one outside the university with the Sabercats, in their infancy. But in that regard, my suggestion for a lot of folks is try to get involved with your athletic departments when you become an undergrad at that university. And we may touch on this, and maybe I'm wearing this through ticket colored lenses, I should say, but there's no better opportunity than a ticket office because of everything you're going to experience while you're there. Yeah. You're going to be front facing. So you learn customer service. You're going to be learning operationally how to build events and manage events. So there's a programming angle.
Yeah.
There's reconciliation. So you satisfy your business office experience. When you build an event, you sell an event, you got to reconcile it. And then obviously from a compliance perspective, we're involved in student athlete admissions where there's NCAA and in our case, Mountain West rules and regulations, and you have to follow all that. So in many light, without overstating what we do, the ticket office is the door to athletics. There's clearly a lot of people that might be their only involvement in our department is that they buy tickets or, want to go to a game or have season tickets or whatever. But in some light, without overstating it, it could be the door to the university too. They may not be an alum. They may not, be in the alumni association. They may not even walk on campus.
Yeah.
But if we're the door to what the whole university's message is about, and, our department and all that stuff, that there's no better role than that. That's what it's about.
Yeah. Darren, I know this may be a loaded question, but what is your role, with San Jose State? What exactly, are you involved with student athlete admissions? Are you involved with, is there do you have a say in merit-based money, scholarships, things like that? Are you what is your role with the university right now?
Well, it's athletics administration. I can tell you that I'm the social chairman and I only plan, fun things and I have everything to do with what play we'll call on 3rd and 10, but I don't. I think the key thing in my role is much of what I just mentioned. Is, we're the face of the department and the voice in operationally in what we do, because in the old days, I could tell you we sell paper admissions, but a lot of times you don't really do that much anymore. I think it's really experiences. We're the ones that people talk to. We're the ones that people may call if they have no other knowledge of our facilities, of our venues, of who we're playing, when we're playing, all that sort of thing. So for me, it's building out and managing events that we sell tickets for. We're a school that sponsors, nearly 24 sports.
Yeah.
We ticket 9. And in some university circles nationally, 9 is a lot. And you have some mountain states that don't have baseball or softball because they can't do it. Or, Clay mentioned he was in Cleveland or whatever. You have a lot of sports Philadelphia. I apologize. You have a lot of sports in the spring that will play a lot of games on the road, right? There's not a lot of Big Ten baseball programs playing a lot of home games in February and March, right?
Right.
They like coming to California or playing in Arizona swing.
Yep.
So it's really managing all of our ticketed events and operations and then everything that's involved in that. I've been very fortunate that I've been a part of our travel group for road football games for all my years or for most of my years anyway. And it's really nice to get to know our fans when they're away from home too. You get to know our parents, you get to know our alums, you get people in the region that are there for that game. But I do want to mention something. I was thinking about it the other day. My favorite, again, I've worked in the department. This is my 23rd year coming up. My favorite meeting that I ever had in our department was in 2006. We actually hosted Stanford in our stadium, which is a pretty rare occasion. We played them in football. We play at Stanford Stadium much of the time. So in 2005, we met because Stanford was remodeling their stadium from 85,500, which anyone who's seen Super Bowl 19 highlights when the Niners played the Dolphins, that was Stanford Stadium. It was a big, big stadium. They're renovating down to 50, but it wasn't going to be ready for their first home game, which was against us. So the game got shifted to our stadium. And in a meeting next to my office at the time, and is now part of what our office is, across the table from me was Bill Walsh, who was the interim AD at Stanford at the time, Darren Nelson, who played in the NFL, Minnesota Vikings, and others, very, very well-known Stanford alum, who was involved administratively, and my ticketing counterpart. And on my side was Tom Bowen, who was our AD at the time, Mark Harlan, who's now the AD at Utah, and myself. And I was just thinking the other day that it's been, we're inching toward 20 years ago, that meeting. It was one of the coolest meetings I've ever been. I'm like, all right, I'm sitting across from Bill Walsh and Darren Nelson played in the NFL. And we're talking about, what we're going to do to help host them in our stadium. Something that was pretty rare. So you get those pinch moments too, where you don't overstate it, but it's like, wow, what we do is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. You've also mentioned that over the time, like there's been a lot of changes, not just, I'm sure at San Jose State, but just, across the country, colleges, universities. What are some of the biggest things that you've seen that are different now versus, say 10, 15 years ago from, just this realm of sports and events? How much has it changed over time? I mean, obviously, I'm sure, like you mentioned, paper tickets are a thing of the past, but what else have you drastically seen that's changed over time?
Well, I mean, from a ticketing perspective, the way people want to manage their tickets and the transferability of that's a big thing. I mean, everything's digital, and we clearly have a core group, just like a lot of people that maybe don't have the wherewithal, certainly don't have the technology. We still have some flip phone people that are like, look, you can send me or try to text me anything you want, but my phone is for calling and talking.
Right.
So you deal with that. But I mean, I think it's just the technology and the capability people have. I think it's amazing to think that, we have people buy season tickets on their phone, for football or basketball at the event at the first game. In the old days, you stood in line. Like my friends at Fresno State, I remember they used to dedicate a window at their first home game, season ticket sales, and they'd have a few people, and then you'd have a long line of people for single games, whatever. And I think, the way that it's approached, I remember years ago, I'm really involved in the International Ticketing Association, INTIX too. And we were on a tour somewhere, and I remember somebody's customer service window. It was an NBA arena. It said ticket problems. That's how it was labeled. And I'm thinking, who's going to be drawn, to have it sorted out there, right? I got a problem. Let me tell you about my problem. So I think that's part of it. And then clearly, the comings and goings. I mean, I'm fortunate on our campus that we're really drawn with international student athletes, and I get quite a few of them that want experience in our department. I just had one that was a student assistant for me who was from Wales. He was a men's soccer player, and he just graduated and he's gone back home. And I think so that's what's changed too for me, is really the involvement of student athletes and bringing them, and students in general. I have graduate assistants on campus that have had they don't go to games.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know much about it. But they want to, and they figured that an opportunity in our office would be a great way to get to know it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's from our angle, but clearly from a university perspective, all over the country, even though I'm not directly involved in this, transfer portal, as you know, is free agency.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, I remember when we were in the WAC at San Jose State, when I first started in 2001, there were 16 schools and all different sizes. We went from Ruston, Louisiana to Hawaii. And, you had schools like Rice and Tulsa that may have had 4,000 or 5,000 student bodies. And then you have our student body, it's 30,000 more than that.
Yeah.
So really an interesting dynamic. So certainly conference shift and transfer portal, people coming around. And then obviously, this NIL.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting time. We go play USC this year in football, and just the dynamic of the NIL there, it's totally different than it was 2 years ago when we went to play there. So,
Sure.
And anyone who loves history might like a matchup between the Spartans and the Trojans too. That's a pretty good one.
Season opener this year, right?
It is. Yeah. We are a week 0 game. So August 26th, we are down there, and then we're home 6 days later to play Oregon State, which is a really, really, really exciting home game for us on CBS. You bet.
Thank you guys for being a part of College Knowledge. Just a reminder, if you're sending your student to school, visit elitecollegiateplanning.com for free resources and to book a free consultation.
Nice. Question. I mean, it's, when we're talking about potential high school students that may be wanting to pursue, I mean, I knew I grew up with sports, it was pretty much what I knew best outside of math. I was always really just natural, good at math. So I thought I was going to be a math teacher, and I liked speaking. And so I was like, yeah, those two things will line up. But I meet a ton of kids, and I know even when I was younger, it's like, well, what do you want to do? I mean, I was like, I don't know. Well, I like sports. So it's like, all right, well, hey, if I'm good at math and I like sports, all right, I'll be a teacher, and then I'll be a coach. That's how I'll merge those two worlds together. In your area, I mean, if you're bringing people in, or they're students that are trying to pursue, a career that you have, do they need essentially a sports background, or is it just more, do you really only see kids that kind of are interested in pursuing, your type of career, whether it's public relations or sports related, that they're passionate about it, or they've been an athlete in their life? What are you kind of seeing as far as, we'll say, like characteristics of students who kind of want to pursue what you're doing?
I think it's a mixture. I mean, you certainly have diehards that are like, look, especially in media relations, right? Or some of the creative stuff now with marketing and others that are like, look, I love social media. I want to do this, and I am creative in my own pages, and I want to be involved. In my area, as I sort of mentioned before, it's been a nice mixture. I'm an area for student athletes in again, I don't have 100 people on my staff. I don't want you to make it seem like that. But I have a good mixture. I have some student athletes that maybe in the off season, when it's not their playing season, might have some time and they want to earn some hours back. Or, our department used to have what was called a 5th year program. And I mentioned, here's a prominent San Jose State alum, Mark Hubbard, who's on the PGA Tour now. Mark was a 5th year. So Mark he was a WAC champion in men's golf one year, but he basically was done athletically. You have, in the old days, you had five years to play for, right? He was done athletically, but he still was pursuing academics at the time. And so we used to have a program called the 5th year, where you could stay on scholarship per se in return for work hours. And so I inherited him, and he worked events for me. It was great.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's a mixture of folks. You're going to have some that are certainly eager, and they know that I'm a good writer and I love statistics, and maybe I want to be involved in media relations and be involved in player interviews or whatever. And then you have some folks, like I mentioned, I've had some international students that really have no other They're not going to games. They really don't know much about it, but they figured it was a good area to inquire about. And then from there, they, felt like they were more involved.
Mm-hmm.
And all that stuff is so big because you have people that might be back of the house mentality. Like, I like being in the back of the classroom in high school, and I keep to myself and I don't talk to anyone, whatever. It's interesting when they, not forced, but when they are put in a situation when they're in the front where, hey man, your personality might come out. You may be able to talk to people like you never thought you could before. And there's nothing wrong with conflict resolution and learning how to do that. And I tell my students too that, hey man, when somebody's in front of you and they're hot, there's nowhere to hide. Like, we got to be able to handle that.
Right.
So, and that happens, you know. And I think the key thing is you want to put them in a position to succeed. I have a friend in the industry who told a story about a situation at a football game years ago at another university where his supervisor was more of a visionary and, really loved all of it, but couldn't at the core of it sell a ticket. Couldn't go in the system and do an elementary task. So he had to bring a staff in a customer service situation to resolve an issue. So now you're bringing another layer. Fans are waiting. They're waiting longer customer service. Now they're getting mad. The game's going on. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, man, I love the mentality of the restaurant manager that, if the cook doesn't show up for the chef, are you closed?
Right.
Roll up your sleeves, baby, because you're cooking now. That's what you're trained to do. And that's my mentality too. I want to put everyone in position to succeed. And I want them to gain that experience to the point where they feel like they can handle it and manage it. That's what it's about,
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think from our first conversation, I was pretty shocked, I guess, to realize how large athletic departments at schools have gotten. And we started talking a little bit about, just the depth of your role. But outside of that, I mean, I know we were discussing some, roles and ideas of what a student could do or what someone could be interested in. But, as far as the different jobs out there in athletic departments now, I feel like from everything I've been looking at, communication side, marketing side, the media, back and forth business. I mean, it seems like there are a lot of different tracks that you can have going into to work for a school's athletic department.
There's no doubt. And as schools get bigger and, in major college football, 85 scholarships or whatever, plus, other guys that might be redshirting or injured or whatever. I mean, you're around all those guys and in every capacity. I mean, a lot of people take it for granted, right? Yeah. But I mean, our equipment guys, there's opportunities, literally boots on the ground, under them. I mentioned the creative side. Our football side has so many creative people and they all bring different ideas to how things are presented. And, there's a lot of pump and circumstance now than there used to be. And who's first and, how does it look? And, let's tease this uniform or this helmet or whatever. And there's definitely opportunities across the board. I mean, I mentioned major college football. That's only 130 or so programs. And if you look at basketball, you got 350 whatever that play Division I, II. It doesn't need to be major college football for your opportunity. Yeah. It could be anywhere you go. Most schools sponsor athletics, even junior college level. And if you're looking to gain experience, there's always volunteer opportunities in most areas internally or with a team. And then certainly, as we mentioned, the opportunities around the team are growing. These teams are growing every year because of the ability among these creative teams and operational things that are always there. I mean, I mentioned the equipment side. I mean, if you go to FCS, all right, so you're at 58 scholarships or whatever, there's still equipment needs. Maybe it's not as many guys, but it's the ins and outs of it. And anyone who's involved in any bit of it, there's a lot of hard work. That's why you're seeing a lot of, assistant AD titles for like a football operations person, a DOFO, that situation or something like that, because the amount of work that's involved in that. You got 100 whatever guys, you got all the logistics of moving, 64 to 70 for a road football game, plus trainers, plus broadcasters, plus administrators, plus everyone involved, creative equipment, blah, 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 all that stuff. There's so much time and effort that people have no idea of. I mean, there was that game years ago where Cal played Hawaii in Australia. Well, it was Cal's home game, and they had to travel every single person that would work a Cal home game to work that game.
Wow.
So you had the PA announcer, you had stats guys, you had all that. I mean, it was basically like, well, it's really cool. And there's special opportunities with networks and all that stuff. I mean, you don't have to be in it a long time to have the relationships. The relationships are what it's about. And again, my suggestion is, in your high school years, as soon as you know where you're going to go, know a lot about what that school's offerings are for something you're interested in, and then pursue that your freshman year. Some of my undergrads have said more than once they really wish that they would have pursued it. Maybe they came in as a junior or a senior or whatever. They wish they would have done it sooner, and I wish I would have. Yeah. They would have too. And then obviously for me, I said before too, that's one of my biggest regrets is that I wasn't as involved as an undergrad as I wish I was, because that would have been, a cool time to learn while I was a student.
That was actually going to be my next question, as far as, if you're high school students, you chose your college or you're trying to figure out where you want to go. I would imagine that these are some really good questions to ask on a potential college visit. What opportunities are there? Because I'm sure, there are so many misconceptions just about college in general. But like you said, there might be a ton of resources or a ton of networking opportunities to, oh, wow, I didn't know that existed. I'm sure there's plenty of that that exist in this area. So what would you say is there any particular kind of best, other than just going and asking? Is there any type of way that students could, who should they talk to kind of get those answers? Like, how can they bring those things to light? Is it on a website somewhere? What advice would you have to those students?
Well, it doesn't even have to be with, the NCAA sponsored or NAIA or NAIA or wherever you are. Yeah. It's going to be sponsored, part of it. There are club sports on a lot of campuses. They're run by associated students. Maybe you have student activities involved to run those. And so there's an opportunity, even without it being Division I or whatever, to have an opportunity, like I said, by way of these club programs. Some of these club programs at some schools are as big or bigger than, or, in some light as big. One of my nephews is at Wisconsin, and he played club volleyball his freshman year, and he was telling me, we're playing, many of the schools in the Big Ten and club volleyball, right? It's not the Badgers Division I team. It's this club team, but they're, they might be playing Northwestern, whatever. And I think, that's my suggestion, is certainly know what sport offerings they have. And then, what opportunity you may look for within that sport or something administratively in there. And then obviously anything within associated students or student activities, because, like I said, I reffed intramurals when I was a student, and I really enjoyed that. So it might have been two dorms playing each other, or, there's interfraternity games or whatever that you can be involved in. And I think that's, to just be a part of the campus fabric. Not every campus is like everyone might think they've seen, in a movie or, at, 108,000 at Michigan Stadium or whatever.
Right.
Some student populations and student experiences come to you. The campus is so historical that, hey, everyone goes and everyone's a part of it. Other ones, you really have to make the experience what you want it to be. Yeah. And, I have friends that were involved in the infancy of the student group at San Diego State that's now turned into this unbelievably rabid student section at basketball games.
Yeah.
And that was sort of a boots on the ground thing where they were just rallying people and trying to get people to games. And now they're selling out their basketball games and, went all the way to the championship. So, I think that's the key thing, is that, let your personality come out and just see where it fits. There's certainly student groups on campus and other social things or athletic things that you can do to get involved.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned, clubs and how big they can be. We had an interview with a lacrosse player at Virginia, and he was shocked very early on to learn the biggest club on campus was the Quidditch club. from Harry Potter.
Sure.
He said, and it was amazing because, again, it just probably started out as something small. And the next thing you know, there was a lot of people that enjoyed it as well. And it became the biggest club. And I think they even, like, again, like you mentioned with volleyball, I think they travel to all their schools, play Quidditch. Like, awesome. I mean, but yeah, so I mean, you definitely be open and make sure that when you are visiting schools, if these are things that you're interested in, we always talk about finding the schools that are the best social, academic, and financial fit. That's finding the best fit school. A lot of these areas that you just mentioned are, when you find those pieces and you're doing more research, is to help figure out the social and maybe even the academic side.
Yeah.
Those are the really important questions to make sure, I'm going to enjoy living my life here for 4 years, and I got to be open, because the more open I am, probably the more I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's kind of along the lines of what I was going to say there is the, academic fit and the financial fit are things we talk about. But on that social fit, I always ask, are we looking for clubs, activities, sports teams when we're looking at these schools? And when I say sports teams, I don't necessarily mean we're looking to go play there. A lot of times, I mean, are we looking for that atmosphere, the sports team to root for, kind of that student body, that atmosphere? I mean, how important, I know, at San Jose, that's a pretty big part of the student body and the activities around, but how important do you think the atmosphere of the athletics and the athletic department is to the students at the school and maybe even down the road from the alumni?
Most campuses is vitally important. I mean, everybody's got an academic mission and no one's going to take away from that. But as we talk about in athletics, sometimes our academic side is not in the paper every day, or what people are reading about on the web consistently during playing seasons. It's box scores and it's this story and that game and what this homecoming means or whatever. And one thing I can mention to you guys too is that there might be a feeling of somebody who is passive and intimidated, right? Well, that's what campuses are about too. You need to get involved with when you're accepted, you go to that admitted day, right? See what they're about. Maybe that turns, maybe you're split between two campuses and then you go to admitted day and you're like, wow, this is actually different than I thought. Certainly orientation is key once you're committed. And a lot of those groups are going to promote themselves to you. You got to sort of figure out, am I going to absorb that? Was I interested in Greek life? Or, well, maybe I am now, or this club or whatever. But I mentioned one of my mentors, Dave Lowenstein, that I love so much. Dave used to talk about it for a first timer at a conference, right? They would have a red dot on their name tags. So everyone knew they were new, but that didn't mean people stayed away. That means people were drawn to them. But at the same time, it's that same, guy or gal or whoever that's in their dorm room the first time. That's fine if you're studying or if you want to relax, but that shouldn't be where you are all the time. Yeah. Dave used to talk about with the red dots. You're not going to meet anybody or learn anything in your room. So get out of your hotel room, / in this case, your dorm room, and walk around the campus and meet some people. And there might be some things that they're appealing to you, or like, the Quidditch thing you talked about, or anything else. I mean, you never know what's being offered. And at some of these larger campuses, hundreds and hundreds of clubs you talked about, and people that might be in the same boat as them. Maybe I'm not from there, I'm new to the area, and that's an icebreaker. I mean, everybody has stories about, relatives or people they know. I have my sister and my brother and my nieces and stuff that have been in college too. And people they met in the dorms ultimately became roommates of theirs outside of the dorms, right? Just relationships. And, that's what it's about. And those relationships can, if there's anything to them, they will continue well beyond your academic time or all the rest of that. I mean, many of us, who've been married, those are the people that you weren't necessarily friends from high school totally that are in your wedding party. It might be your friends from college.
Yeah. And I mean, in general, just networking, and that just, I always take it back to that, just network. And network doesn't have to be a professional networking group. It's communicating with people. It's letting people know what you're interested in, asking questions, right? I mean, there's the old adage, getting a job, it's who you know. Well, the more people you know, the better your chances are, right? So I think that's definitely great advice. You have to be outgoing. Which I think, the past couple of years, when the pandemic happened, I think, technology has gained and we've had all these advances and it's kind of cut down on we can network differently, but as far as like the actual social interaction face to face, it's imperative. And again, that's a really good message, I would say, that you brought out. Be outgoing, even if it's not necessarily comfortable. You got to do it. It's going to lead to good things down the road. I think the last thing I wanted to mention, you were talking about like the student body section at basketball, and like, hey, it's really grown. And immediately one of the things that went into my head was, I think it's Taylor University basketball. They do this thing called Silent Night. Have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
ESPN used to, it was like once a year you would hear about Taylor basketball because of this game. And that was it. And it's insanity. But I remember I was like, when I first saw it, I was going, well, hey, if I'm looking at college, I might want to go to that game or see what that's like. It's basically I don't know the exact details of it, but I think the game takes place at midnight, and like for the first 5 minutes of the game, the entire crowd is silent. They don't make a sound. And then whenever like the 10th point is scored, they go nuts. They have to stop the game. The fans run on the court. They're throwing stream. Like it's insanity. But the idea of, you're saying like, hey, a little student body section, and somebody that can be creative and you can be outgoing can lead to that. And now you've got something that is, once a year is on every news station or ESPN. It's pretty cool. So I just wanted to mention that. I don't know if you've seen that or ever taken part in something like that, but it was.
No, I think that's really cool. You know, and you get to know your school's traditions. I mean, Clay mentioned he's in Philadelphia. Well, what's better in college athletics than the St. Joseph's Hawk?
Yeah.
Like, to me, I think the fact that the minute the team takes the floor, that hawk starts flapping its wings. And the fact that it does not stop until the last player leaves at the end of the game. What an unbelievable tradition. I mean, we're not talking about a hawk flying in like Air Force has the Falcon or, Auburn, War Eagle. I'm talking about the mascot. But how funny is that?
Yeah.
And, you really appreciate that at NCAA tournament time because they really promote the mascots
really
well. And I have a friend who went to, a relative actually, who went to NCAA basketball with me in San Jose. His favorite mascot's the Oregon Duck. I don't know if he can name 2 players in their program the last 10 years, but at the NCAA tournament, he could not get his eyes fixated off the Oregon Duck. That was absolute hilarity because he was fooling with the refs during timeouts. He's fooling around over there and he's running over there. And that's the tradition of it and all the best and all the rest. And, it's really fun when you're a part of it too. We did this in 2010 when we played Wisconsin. And I'm not just saying that because my nephew goes there now, but you have many teams between the third and fourth quarter that play Wisconsin now who do the jump around like their whole student body does and the whole stadium does. Our whole team did it in 2010 on the sideline. We're the visitors and it was a close game. We did jump around. So I think that's when you see those traditions and all that other stuff, that's absolutely so much fun. And it's such a part of it. And if you're not someone who is fortunate to play at that level, appreciate those who can, and, keep it up athletically. Like I was a Greek at San Jose State as an undergrad, and I played interfraternity basketball. It was a lot of fun. I felt pressure in those games like 2 or 3 years after I graduated high school that I hadn't had since I played in high school.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was goofy. It was because I was playing in front of my peers and maybe I weighed 10 pounds more than I did, my senior year or whatever, but that's what it's about. So some of it will find you, but don't wait on that. Really be active and adamant. And on San Jose State's campus, one of our most storied figures is Crazy George, who crazy with a K. And if you're not familiar with George Henderson, he's basically the inventor of the wave. And when George was an undergrad at San Jose State, he would go to football games and he really didn't think that our cheerleaders and band were getting the crowd into the games. Took it upon himself. Brought a drum. Here we go. Made a career out of it. And if you want to Google him, do it. He's been hired by most major leagues and many teams within those leagues as a professional cheerleader.
Wow.
And still is involved in some of our games. And basically at an Oakland A's playoff game, facilitated what was the first wave. He's like, well, what if it's a coordinated effort of people standing up? Yeah. Which some people hate now, right? Which is funny. They're like, oh no, I don't want to be a part of that. Amazing how many places still do it and how many people still absorb that, which is such a cool thing.
Yeah. But you got anything else before we sign off today, sir?
Yeah, I guess the last thing that kind of jumped out at me too, just to I guess look at what you do and realize that it's probably no normal day or routine, right? Just being the appointee on the committee for the playoff expansion, maybe not something you'd think that the personnel involved in ticketing has a part of, but obviously that's a huge part of this. So I know that's probably something that's changed a little bit in your world over the last few years, and I guess speaks to the fact that there probably is no normal routine year to year for what you do.
No, and I think, I mentioned before, relationships are a big part of it, and I'll tell you a couple of things here as we wrap up here. Being knowledgeable about what you do and energetic about what you do can lead to those opportunities. And that was very flattering. I was the Mountain West appointee. I am the Mountain West Conference appointee on the ticketing side. Every conference plus Notre Dame has one representative on the ticketing side for this expansion. And so we've met a few times, and it's awesome. To think that starting in 24, this is coming, that it could be expanded and you could host the game on your campus, and really special. So with those opportunities are really that. And, post-COVID, I think I've always been somebody who's energetic and trying to rally people. Like, we're always at our basketball tournament, all the ticket directors at the same place every year. Well, why don't we meet? So we started doing that for years. And then around COVID, we did the same thing. These Zooms were a regular occurrence where we were just checking in on each other. And without getting too deep, it's amazing how much they matter. Our late colleague, Russell Hayden at Fresno State, actually passed away during COVID from cancer. And no one knew that it had returned. We were seeing each other regularly. And then, we found out that, he got really sick and had passed away. And I had to deliver the message to everyone else. It wasn't on Zoom. I called everybody. Yeah. But it's amazing bringing people together and having common interests or whatever. Look, Michigan's got 109,000 at a football game. We're going to have maybe at our stadium capacity with the new building, we're full at like 18 or 19. So, you're talking about that. Doesn't mean that we don't have the same customer service issues. Doesn't mean that we have the same historical venue issues or transportation or parking, whatever. Doesn't matter. All those things, put people around you and rally people around you that can really help you get to that common goal, and you can really lean on each other and work together. And even in the hardest times, those relationships mattered more than they ever did.
Sure.
During COVID, real quick, guys, we all on the ticket side, we became money managers.
Right.
So I'm from a reconciliation and accounting perspective. I'm audited. I have things that I have to report to our CFO and into the campus. But you had people during that time that spent money, and you're respectful of that. But we were respectful of whatever their wishes were at that point for whenever we played again. So we had some of our highest donors that chose one of those three options. One, I know that we can donate it back to the department to help, with COVID testing, blah, 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 whatever. Extra years, there was a COVID year. So now that kid's in school longer, right? Mm-hmm. You had people that certainly wanted to roll it toward whenever we played again. Totally respectful of that. And then you had people that with no explanation could have asked for their money back. We're absolutely going to do that. So it's amazing. No one had ever seen anything like COVID before, but we all expanded our roles to match that and to respect whatever people's needs were. We had donors on our campus that asked for refunds. I wasn't going to ask them why or for what reason. I'm totally respectful. And I knew that when we showed again, they would return. So, my thing, I guess my final thoughts here are, always prepare yourself for every situation. I don't think anyone ever thought that they might have to socially distance their stadium based on rise and run of steps and rows and aisles.
Right.
But it's funny. Like, I went back to math. I'm a numbers guy. I'm like, okay, rise versus run. And, those skills that you learn, you're going to apply in anything you do. Like I said, academically, I was a PR major. Maybe that's mostly related to media relations. No, all those communication and writing experiences that I have really helped me in what I do now. It made me feel like I could, be a good writer for something I need to present. It could help me talk to somebody maybe differently than I thought I would need to. And all that's important, vitally important, and it's all good.
Yeah. This was fantastic. I mean, some of the messages that you brought today and some of the advice for just general students and not even just all students, the idea of being outgoing, find out what you like, pursue passions, ask questions, be outgoing, even some of the stuff on the internships and just, I mean, really, really good stuff all across the board. It's greatly appreciated. And yeah, opened my eyes even a little bit to, to what goes on behind the scenes and how, diverse the different job roles and different majors that you could have and still have a role, in athletics, whether it's professional or college. It's always great. So definitely, guys, be outgoing. And I think my big takeaway is if this is something that you want to pursue, again, like we mentioned, when you visit a school or when you decide on where you're going, start asking questions, like Darren said, you don't want to be that third or fourth year saying, I wish I did this 2 or 3 years ago. Sure. Definitely take advantage of that. Darren, thank you so much for joining us today. Greatly appreciate it. This was a ton of fun. Clay, thanks for joining me. And everybody, we will see you next week on our next episode of College Knowledge. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys for being a part of College Knowledge. As you know, it's part of our mission to help you guys. So please send any questions you have to us at info@collegeknowledge.net.